Time to talk some NBA. Erik is here with me, and we take a look at the NBA standings up on NBA.com. As we record this on Wednesday night, keep in mind that things are fluid. There are games happening right now, and so if we talk about things, this standings might be a game off or half a game off, things like that. But in the last week, Erik, we've had the second highest scoring game in NBA history, 176-175. Damian Lillard scored 71 points. We had the biggest comeback of the year. Lakers were down 27 and came back to win. LeBron's hurt. Durant's playing tonight. He's back. Ja Morant had a big quarter, and then Ja Morant had some very disturbing news come to light. We're not sure what's going to happen with him. Out west, from the 4th seed down to like the 13th, there's 4 games that separate them. And your Bucks, they just don't stop losing, and we can start right there with them. They are now number 1 in defensive rating. They've won 15 straight. They're the number 1 seed. They have the best record in the NBA. And they showed that they were able to do it a little bit without Giannis. Then he comes back and he has 33 and 15 and kind of puts any doubt or any worry for Bucks fans away with that game. You're a Bucks fan and just sort of looking at them as, you know, the team that's the hottest in the NBA right now. How do you feel about Milwaukee?
I feel they just, no one should get hurt. I mean, that's kind of, you know what I mean? Because the reality of the situation is they just want to get to the playoffs healthy. Last year, obviously, no Middleton hurt them, so they just want to get in there healthy. I kind of like how they moved Hill, so now they have Carter playing a little bit more. Carter will pick you up full court. He can make the opposing point guard's life pretty miserable. And less Grayson Allen on the court. He's not that athletic, and his release point is really low, so it's easy to block his shot. He doesn't have that quick of a release. So when you get in the playoffs, he's pretty, like, having him out there for more than 10 to 12 minutes is a hindrance more than of a help. But yeah, I mean, as long as they stay healthy, it is what it is. You know, that's just the big goal for them. You know what I mean? Like that's basically because they're not playing a meaningful game until May. Yeah,
and you pointed something out for Philly, and I think for Philly and Boston, it's a little bit more of the case than it is for Milwaukee. Like I would agree that, like, I would rather not have to play against Embiid in a series earlier than you have to. Not even the fact that Philly is the greatest team in the world, but you just never know with a guy like that. If he's healthy out there, you have to end up getting beat up a little bit to foul him. You know, he's just like a big body that you end up taking some bumps and bruises that you may not need. If Milwaukee's able to sit and stay 1 where they are here too, like we're probably in a situation out west where you want to make the Cavaliers prove it to you come playoff time right now, right? With this new team that they put together, we need to really see it from them before we get really scared of them.
And the one thing about Milwaukee is, I was just effing around on Twitter today, and I saw some guy reference what Brian Scalabrine said. He said right now what Giannis is doing is he's playing Nerf ball. Basically, everyone else is playing basketball, but he's just so physically dominating. It's like you're just playing Nerf ball with your kids, if that makes sense to everybody. Just because he's so physically imposing. And, I mean, if you just kind of look at, like, the star players in the league and who kind of has that drive, that ethic to just kind of do what needs to be done in a game. I mean, Giannis right now, I mean, with LeBron, like, obviously, like, not 100%. We don't know what's going on with him. LeBron's in that alpha position right now, kind of in that league. So, yeah, I think they're sitting pretty as long as they stay healthy. You know, I think they are going to be the team that comes out of the East because they were up 3-2 on Boston without Middleton and lost in 7. So I think unless there's an injury, I think the East is theirs right now.
And Boston is currently number 2. Tatum got tossed the other day. He's kind of had a couple disappointing games, not up to his normal status. But Boston being behind Milwaukee in the number 2 seed, that would put them in a possible second round matchup with Philly. Again, we saw them play Philly the other day, and Philly had a great game from Embiid. Tatum was only 7 for 17 with 18 points, and Boston still was able to win that game. But as I'm pointing out, Boston doesn't have a ton of big bodies to throw at you. It's like that's going to wear you down. And if you want to try to win the East and go and beat Milwaukee, you don't necessarily want to get into a 6-game series with Philadelphia and a huge dude like Embiid that's going to give you he's going to wear you down a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, my one thing with Boston is Tatum can just go off at any time. Brown's kind of a little bit inconsistent. Smart's inconsistent. Brogdon's inconsistent. Robert Williams, if he gets hurt again, he's going to get that injury bug, which is really that injury bug tag, which is really hard to get away from. Horford's another year older. I just don't know. I don't trust Boston as much as everyone else does.
Me neither.
I think Grant Williams played insanely over his head
last year too. He was,
and, it is what it is. I think Derek White is a good piece, but he comes off the bench. This isn't a team that I really trust that much. In terms of Philly, I really think realistically, and we talked about it last week, if Philly wants anything to come out of the East, they need to that one line, because I don't think with the history of Embiid and Harden not being in shape that they can go in a deep battle with the Celtics than a deep battle with the Bucks back to back. They can only beat one of those teams. I don't think they
I don't think for Boston, and the same sort of thing for Boston, like I don't think they want to do that, right? Just the way those teams match up. I think for all of those 3 teams we're talking about, Milwaukee, Boston, and Philly towards the top, you have to make the Cavs prove it, right, at this point. Because while they've been a very good defensive team and they have Donovan Mitchell, who's a very proven playoff performer, you just have to make this new group of guys show that in a series they can beat these other good teams. And I'm right now not quite as scared of Cleveland as I would of any of those other 3 teams, honestly.
My thing with Cleveland is this. What has done it? I know he scores a lot of points, but I just can't get over. You've had one series when you were the man in Utah when there was no Leonard and you lost to the Clippers and Trey Mann lit you up. And then last year you were the man in Utah yet again and you lost to a Luka-less Mavericks team. That's twice, 2 different years. I love Jared Allen. I love Evan Mobley. I really feel like Mitchell being there, you took the ball to Garland's hands, which I'm not a big fan of. So I'm just not. Mitchell is a phenomenal scorer, but I don't know if you can win with him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and if you can win with him being your 1A, right? Like your number 1 guy. Now, I will give him a little credit. He's trying a little bit harder on defense this year. You can see he's just making more of an effort, where last year and in other years in Utah, he would just stand there and not even move his feet and get in front of people. Cavs currently sitting in that 4th spot. They're just ahead of the red hot Knicks. The Knicks have won 6 in a row. In that stretch, Eric, they've outscored opponents 120 to 106. So they're winning games by more than 14 points. They're shooting 49% from the field and 38% from 3. And I'm not saying the only reason why they've won is because of Josh Hart, but look at Josh Hart in those 6 games, 13.8 points per game. He's playing 26 minutes a game and probably less than he would be if these games were closer, right? Like the Knicks are blowing out their opponents during this stretch. He's shooting 61% from the field, but he's shooting better from 3. He's shooting 63% from 3-point range, 5.3 rebounds, over 3 assists, and 1.2 steals during that 6-game winning streak. He's just a winning player, right? He's a guy that makes winning plays, and he's a good player to have on your team. The Knicks are playing well right now. They're in an interesting spot because, they're the 5 right now, and they would have a first-round matchup with Cleveland, where you would at least feel like the Knicks have put themselves in a spot where they probably have a fighter's chance in that series for a team like Cleveland that is not proven yet. We have to see what their makeup is going to be like come playoff time.
I like Brunson more than I like Mitchell. I mean,
We saw it last year. He
we've
carried
seen
a
it.
team.
He's proved it to us. Mitchell really,
Oh
for as
yeah,
much
that's the rematch from last year.
hasn't really proven
That
it
was them
to us.
last year.
Yep, you got Mitchell Robinson who can bang down low with Mobley and Allen, and you got Hart who's Mister Everything. RJ Barrett, Quentin Grimes. They have some pieces. You know, it's going to be an entertaining series against the Cleveland team, which a lot of people like, a lot of people are hyping. I'm just not quite sipping the Kool-Aid yet.
The Nets are kind of in a tough spot because they've lost 3 in a row now. They're still the 6th seed, but you can tell like they've got a bunch of fun players, like rotation players, guys that would be really, really useful for winning teams, but they just don't have a star. They don't have someone who's been the guy on a team before, a closer, right? They've got Bridges, they've got Dinwiddie, and some fun pieces, but I just don't know what to expect from them down the stretch or come playoff time. Right now, they are only a game and a half, 2 games in the loss column ahead of the Miami Heat in the 7th spot. And and behind them are the Hawks. The Hawks are, 4 games behind the Nets in the loss column there too. So it's probably Miami that Brooklyn's trying to hold off, but I don't know. I don't think much of what we could see from Brooklyn if they were to get themselves into a playoff series. And I'm more likely to see them kind of falling in a team like you like Toronto, even like moving up the ranks and getting hot and catching them.
Yeah, and I'm telling everyone right now, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be on the Brooklyn Nets next year. That's going to be the young star player that's a little disgruntled that they're going to go out and trade for. Miami, the thing with Miami is, look, Miami's behind the 8 ball with that Duncan Robinson contract. And I just really don't feel a big 3 of Hero, Bam, and Butler is quite good enough. Also with the point guard position, what are you rolling out there? Caleb Martin? Don't get me wrong. I love Caleb Martin from his Nevada days, but you just can't win at that. And when I say, okay, think of the Miami Heat as an organization, what's one of the first words that comes to your mind right now if I were to ask you? See, I was going to use the term developmental.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of what I think of the Heat. They're a developmental franchise.
Yeah.
Now, just a couple years ago, 5, 7, 10 years ago, they had Wade, Bosch, and James. You know what I mean? Like, they kind of need to do something right now because they're kind of stuck kind of in the dead zone right now.
The best thing that could happen to them would be to get to the 6, get a series with Philly if Philly was the 3, and then hope that Bam could match up well enough with Embiid. And I could see them beating Philly, but I don't think they could beat Miami, or I don't think they could beat Boston or the Bucks as they are right now. I think in like if everything were to go well for them, if they played Philly and Bam played just serviceable defense on Embiid, and then you've got Butler, who's sort of like, kind of still pissed off at Philly for what happened there. I could see them winning that series, or at least having the best chance against Philly than they were against anyone else. But that's like their ceiling right now, right? I mean, I just can't, I can't see more than that for Miami trying to get to the 6th spot. And then behind Miami, we see the Hawks in the 8th spot. They just fired their coach, and they're at 500 right now. Behind them is your Toronto Raptors team that you like, Eric. They've won 8 of their last 10. And then Washington,
like the quietest, hottest team in the league. They're so under the radar right now.
Nobody talks about them at all. You never hear about them, and you really rarely see them on like national games.
No, they're just kind of there, just trucking along, doing their thing. Now piggybacking back to the Hawks, Trae Young's been in the league for how many years? 4. And he's already gotten his 2nd coach fired. I said this a couple of years ago. This guy's got some serious leadership issues. And it's kind of showing right now. All this hype was made when you brought in DeJounte Murray. And at the end of the day, Trae Young is ruining this franchise. You look at that team. You got DeJounte Murray, Clint Capella, and DeAndre Hunter. There's no way with those 3 young guys. And if Trae Young is supposed to be what everyone thinks he is, 8th place in the East right now. You just should not. Trae Young, I think the Hawks really need to look into moving on from Trae Young, just because you're constantly gonna be getting that headache, and you're not winning with the headache. The thing with the Raptors, everyone's playing in a natural position. They try to play small. They really were lacking that true center. You got
now they got him.
They got Perdo,
and he knew. And what's nice is that he's someone like things that a lot of these teams are going to have to deal with, growing pains, right? With new players that they acquired. It's not always just slot them in and it's automatic. But what's nice is that this guy knows their system. He knows these players too. So he can come back and he's really familiar and comfortable right away. There's not that much of that process again of like relearning everything. And he's a smart player.
And it puts everyone back in their natural position. OG slides to the small, Barnes to the off guard. And then you bring in Gary Trent Jr. off the bench, where you finally have a scoring punch that comes off the bench. He was starting with him being in the starting lineup. You had no scoring on the bench. Now you at least have someone to get some buckets in that second unit. Yeah, I really think that Toronto is going to be the team that I think they probably get up to the 7 line, and they actually probably do have a chance to get on the 6 line with, when you look at their schedule and how their schedule lines up, especially like the last 8 games.
I will tell you this: if Toronto, if Boston was the 2 and Toronto was the 7, and Toronto won that 7-8 play-in game to get to the 7 spot, I don't know if I would play Toronto in the full series, but I would definitely be playing Toronto a lot of games throughout that series against Boston, because the thing is, they would match up really well with Boston because they have a couple long wings that they could throw at Tatum and Brown, right? Yeah. They've got multiple bodies that they could throw at them to make things really difficult for them. At the very least, make them have to really earn it. That would not be fun in a 6-game series for Boston to have to deal with like Siakam and Anunoby repeatedly, and Barnes, even just these longer like athletic wings. So let's see if Toronto can continue their rise. Washington's holding that 10th and final spot right now, and they are just a game and a half ahead of the Bulls and the Pacers, 2 teams that are going to try and see if they can make one last rush in the final weeks.
One quick betting tip: the Chicago Bulls, and they did it today again, are a first quarter covering.
Oh, you called this one earlier. Yep.
They are by far the best team in basketball in the NBA covering the first quarter, especially when they're on the road. First quarter, they're absolutely insane. Along with that, the Knicks are the best team first half ATS.
A little look at what's going on out east. Let's head over to the west, where the Nuggets, they're just sort of cruising now.
Before we get started on the west, I need to ask you a question. Okay.
Yep.
One player made a change. Okay. And since he's been on his new team, this is his stats. Okay. Field goal percentage, 53%. Pretty good. 3-point percentage, 44%. Pretty good.
Very good.
Free throw percentage, hasn't missed, 100%. And it's like, he's shooting like 4 or 5 a game. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's just like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
5.6 assists, 9.3 rebounds, 16 points a game, 2.3 steals. Is that someone that you would want on your team?
Absolutely.
That's Russell Westbrook.
Yeah. That's just funny. But
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
when you just kind of look at the numbers, and we're going to talk about the Clippers, and like, the thing is like, look, like, with the way the game has changed, Russ isn't as effective as he was, but he's still putting up good numbers. You look, Harden had his best season when Russ was his point guard. Durant had his best season statistically. Russ was his point guard. And there's one other guy that had their best season. Paul George had his best season. Russ is his point guard. I kind of think that with how the stuff went down in LA, there's many people that needed to be blamed, but I kind of feel Russ got the blunt of it unjustly. If that makes sense.
Because here's the thing. Russ shouldn't have been in LA. That was the problem. So, to begin with, nobody from the beginning thought this was going to be a great fit. So it was destined to fail. It was never going to work. And immediately we've seen the Lakers just look better as a team in the little bits that they've had everyone together. Because whether or not they're a team that could win the title, they just fit better on a basketball court with who they have now. And it didn't make sense to have 3 max level players. None of them are above average 3-point shooters. And one of them is ball dominant. And you want LeBron to have the ball in his hands a lot, because now if Russ has the ball, you're just taking it out of LeBron's hands. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense the way the team was built.
And it wasn't like Russ was like demanding a trade to LA. You know what I mean?
No, he wasn't forcing his way there.
I just kind of feel like in the media and the stuff I read on the on Twitter, he kind of gets the blunt of the blame.
Well, like for example, you can go this way, right?
Out a little bit more.
The Clippers have lost 3 in a row with Russell Westbrook. Yeah. The last 13 games he started have all been losses.
Yeah.
Which, is that his fault? No. He's still plays well. He won a few games for the Lakers this year. He gives you a boost and a bolt of energy that you need sometimes. The problem mainly is is when everything slows down. Yeah. Right? If you could use Russ just as the lighted up bench guy, or the guy you could just ride when he's playing well, and then last couple minutes of the game, okay, he comes out. The problem is when you do that to him, he gets mad, he gets discontent, he starts chirping, and he makes the locker room sort of not a great place to be, which is what he's done which is what he did with the Lakers, and the other 2 teams he didn't really do because he was still going to be the best guy on those teams. It's sort of can he ever just fully tell himself and embrace the fact that I'm not really the guy I used to be? Because if he can do that mentally, he will still be able to be valuable to teams for a while. You can use guys like him. It wasn't a fit for the Lakers. Now, as we're talking about the Clippers, let's talk a little bit about them. One of their biggest problems, Erik, is their defense. For some weird reason, they are awful consistently on the defensive side. The last 15 games, they have the number 19 defensive rating. They're only in front of the Pistons, Jazz, Thunder, Mavs, Hawks, Kings, Spurs, Pacers, Nets, Rockets, and Blazers. Those are all tanking teams and teams with bad defenses. They've been allowing 117 points per game. They're letting their opponents shoot 50% from the field and 40% from 3 over their last 23 games. They've had players in and out, but Kawhi has played a lot in that stretch, and some of it comes down to just effort, right? They have a couple of guys. A lot of their players are sort of those quiet, relaxed veteran types. So maybe a guy like Russ can at least help to get an energy level raised, but that's not championship level defense at all.
No, not at all. And I mean, I'll say it, they just don't have leadership. It's not Giannis or Djokovic or Joker are in your face guys.
No,
but they're well respected, and they have a subtle way of being intense and being just a leader, and their team will follow them into war. Same with Fred VanVleet. Those guys are quiet leaders. And it's okay to be quiet, but Leonard's not a leader. He's just quiet. You know what I mean? He just doesn't you know what I'm saying? He just doesn't lead anybody. And I really feel like with the NBA is you have to have that alpha that's going to be leading you. And because of that, you look at who the Clippers have with George and Leonard being their two best players. I just don't think they have it. I love the Mason Plumlee edition. I thought that was one of the sneakiest, best ads. But I mean, I think this team is just, going to be what they are. I mean, I think the West is absolutely crazy right now.
It's nuts right now. And it's so hard to, like, as we talk about it, honestly,
and I mean, I kind of feel like the team that kind of is getting lost in the wind is Dallas. Dallas has not been playing, and I know we're not going in order, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, no, go ahead. That's fine. We're talking because it's hard to go in order in the West because they're just all jumbled. So let's talk. Yeah, just talk about everything.
They're just. I mean, like, let's just kind of look at their schedule right now. Their next game's at Philly, who's guarding Embiid. Next game's at versus Phoenix. These are home against Phoenix, who's guarding Durant, Booker. Then you have Utah, Pelicans, Memphis. Another game against the Lakers, Memphis, Golden State, 2 games against Charlotte.
We saw Anthony Davis just completely dominate them. They have no big. They have no size
Philly,
down there.
Miami, Atlanta. I mean, you look at this. Their schedule is a tough schedule. And you and I talked about it along with Caleb earlier today on the BTV show. I really had an issue with... I
think you said Caleb, which was great. You meant Kyle, which is great.
Kyle,
no, that was great, though. Shout out Caleb.
And I just really had an issue with Luka in the corner and Kyrie at the top of the key.
Right.
With the ball. I really had an issue with it. And when that first happened, I was like, look, you got 2 ball dominant guys with huge egos.
Well, and honestly, who would make the most sense to have the ball and then to be the spot up guy? Kyrie is just a better pure shooter than Luka is. Luka's the guy you want making the decision and controlling it.
100%.
And he's going to get Kyrie the ball in that situation a lot of the time. But I agree with you. I don't like mindset. It's like they're forcing it, right? Are they trying too hard because it's like the new guy when you're in a new relationship and you really want to please the girl, right? So you're doing stuff that's like not in your comfort zone. Is that what's going on right now with Kyrie? Because they don't have a whole lot of wiggle room as we're looking right now.
No. And their schedule is tough. They don't play a lot of teams that are tanking. They play a lot of teams that are in the same boat as they are. But let's be honest. Dallas had to do something because Luka wasn't happy. They got someone out there. I don't think it was the right piece to add. Excuse me.
But you got to take a shot.
Guys, like when you have these guys that come in that are both alphas, I really feel the reason Wade and James worked so well together is because both those guys were mature enough in their careers. They understood when to take the back seat to the other. And it was like a roving thing when to do that.
But remember, it took a while because their first 10, 20 games, they were like 10-10. And I remember everybody was saying right off the bat, like, this isn't going to work. And then it was like, they just started to understand that it was like they could flow. They played off of each other. And it was sometimes it was you go, I go, but it didn't become as much of like your turn, my turn as a flow, right? Like as a constant flow type thing where, it's not worked great for Dallas early on. And as we see, Dallas is now dropped into the 7 spot and they are only 2 games in the loss column ahead of the Lakers in the 12th spot right now. And as we're recording, the Lakers and the Thunder are playing in a big game, but there's a lot of these important games happening right now. The Lakers play the T-Wolves coming up later this week. Let's get back towards the top, Eric. Who did we miss on the Grizzlies who will, they're in the number 2 spot. And
first real quick, can I just say, like, I still don't get everyone's hate for Joker. Like, it's not like he did have that one incident where he pushed the Morris brother.
I don't understand. I
mean, just what this guy does on the court is just
unbelievable.
Absolutely insane.
You see him,
Vanderbilt's about ready to beat Kentucky straight up.
You see his arms and the stuff at the games after the games, Joker, where they like scratch him and he's like bleeding on his arms and he's cut up all over the place. Like he gets.
Well, did you hear his thing? Like they kept asking him about the triple doubles, like trying to get so many triple doubles, and he just kept on saying, "Oh, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care."
Well, he doesn't. There was there's a stat.
Then they asked him. He goes, "Well, I mean, I'm caring. I'm trying to get blah blah blah." And everyone like stopped. And he goes, "Why do you care all of a sudden?" He goes, "Well, you kept on asking me. I thought I was supposed to care about this."
Yeah.
So
you can tell the way he plays. He's the most unselfish player you will see. There's nothing about him that's a stat patter at all. There's nothing about him that's like me. I'm trying to get this at all. And you know what? They're 5.5 games up in the West. There's nothing you can really say about him. Like he's not doing it instead of winning games. In order to win, him being involved in everything is important for them. And honestly, he is so good offensively that I think, because I was thinking about him like in comparison to, just the big men, right? And the other really good big men. And the obvious thing that you'll say for him is that he's not as good defensively, or he's just not quite as dominant as a presence. He has improved a lot on the defensive end, though. I will say people act like he's just nothing down there, but he is so good offensively. It's not that it doesn't matter, but that it's like he gives himself this margin on the defensive end, right? Like a guy like Anthony Davis, for example, because I bring him up, I'm a Laker fan or whatever. When he's playing well, healthy, he's as good of a defensive player as there is in the league. Like I personally think he and Giannis are probably like the best two defensive players because what they can do defensively and how versatile they are. And like how for big guys, they can like get out on smaller guys and actually sort of guard the perimeter, and like they're smart and stuff too. And then on the offensive side, Anthony Davis is really good too and super skilled, but like he is a very good offensive big man. But what Jokic does offensively, like they're not even in the same ballpark. Like there's nobody even close to Jokic, what he can do on the offensive side. I'm in so much agreement with you. I think we just get like, we start hating on guys sometimes because they get like, we get sick of them and we just hate on them for a hate. But like, there is nothing negative that I can possibly say about Jokic or Giannis right now. Like, I just don't know what I could say about either one of those guys that's not
and
absolutely
both
positive.
Guys have, how can I say this? They have that pit bull in them, but it's
know what I
mean? They definitely have the pit bull. They have that mindset,
and they're two of the guys in a league of players we're watching just in the last few days. Guys that aren't playing.
Really scary. Can you just imagine for a minute? I'm going to say two people. Just imagine if they had Giannis's and Joker's just mindset and just pit bull on him on the court. Okay. I'm going to mention three. Sorry. Embiid, Luka, and AD.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because like
just like the motor,
those
too.
Guys, like the motor and the mindset. Those guys are all three of them are good.
And because when you see them,
wired, they're just not wired.
Because when you see them do it,
other two guys do.
Because with all of them, you see glimpses of it.
Yeah.
You just don't see it night in, night out. And that's the difference between Giannis and Jokic. They don't care who you're playing, where you're playing, on the road, at home, Sunday morning, Saturday night. They are They don't care about anything else but just beating the crap out of you.
Yeah.
On the basketball court. Like they don't. Like Anthony Davis gets mad that, we see him like Draymond will like start like getting at him, and then Davis gets mad and you start to see him and then he sort of takes it to the next level. And then Luka, sometimes he's pissed off or whatever, the refs, and then you could see him get that oomph that where it sort of takes him to the next level. But that's every minute of every game with Jokic and every minute of every game with Giannis. Every minute.
three just had, or like if, earlier in their careers, like, Joker is a little plump, but he has gotten in shape. He's never going to have like the bodybuilder type body that like LeBron has or Giannis has, but he has dropped some weight and he's in shape. I really feel like, especially with Luka, he's just not in as good a shape as he should have been.
So let's talk about. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, in all this, I kind of feel like my best future ever was Kings plus 450 to make the playoffs.
Oh man, that is so nice. And like, okay, so
to Mike Brown and everything that whole organization is doing.
In looking at the way the West sets up right now, Memphis just got some news. There was a disturbing report about Ja Morant that came through, that he was involved in an altercation with a 17-year-old. I'm sure more will come out about it, but
it's one of those things, like, we don't know
everything. We don't know anything, everything. We don't know if it's going to cost him.
Hard to speculate.
Playing games or anything. But I will say, in just watching the Grizzlies last night, even, they were a full-strength team last night, and the Lakers played them without LeBron, without D'Angelo Russell. Lakers were up at halftime, and then in the third quarter, Ja scored 28. He went crazy. The Lakers had 26 turnovers, and in the fourth quarter, with like 3 minutes to go, it was still a 4-point game. Like, things went really poor for them. The weird thing about Memphis is they're not a crazy three-point shooting team, and they're still like sloppy. And I have a tough time trusting some of the guys after Ja. Like, I totally trust Ja in like closing moments, and he's. But
two trades at the deadline that were so close to being made, and if they were made, the way we look at the NBA now would be completely different. Fred VanVleet almost got dealt to the Bucks without the Bucks having to give up Middleton and Holiday. I mean, could you imagine that team with that? Lights out. And the Grizzlies offered an insane amount of picks, first-round picks. I think it was like 4 or 5 first-round picks, plus a couple of their young players, to the Brooklyn Nets for Bridges. You get Bridges on that team, for as young as Bridges is, I kind of feel like he's going to be an adult that's constantly on the floor, and that's what that team is kind of lacking. Dylan Brooks is a pit bull, but he's an immature kid. You know what I mean? He does some stupid stuff, and because he does that stuff on the court, it takes him off the court. If you put Bridges on this team, imagine how differently we look at this team.
I know, and then because you have the combo of Brooks, then you have Jaren Jackson Jr., who, when he's on the court, is very good. He gets into foul trouble a lot. And so he has to come out of games a lot because he's really athletic. He's a great defender, but he gets himself into foul trouble. So now all of a sudden you have Brooks, who's sort of a wild card. You have Jackson, who's very good, but sometimes in the big moments in playoff series, we've seen that he's hard to trust. I will say this. If you are a team in the West, any team that's in like the 5 through where the Lakers in Oklahoma are, 13, I think what you want is to try to get to the number 6 spot, which is what everybody wants. But just if you can get to the 6, and if the 2 and 3 were to stay Memphis and Sacramento, like, if I am a fan of the Lakers, the Clippers, the Mavericks, any of these teams, I would sign myself up right now for a playoff series with the Kings, who have been very good and have a great offense, but they're not proven. And then if you were to win that, you could possibly get a playoff series with the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't think in the 2-3, it looks as difficult as the 1-4, where you'd have to play either the Nuggets or maybe Phoenix even, or maybe a healthier Golden State Warriors team. It just, that's something that I think's to take a look at, because Memphis is a team that I still need to see it from them in the playoffs. And then Sacramento, obviously, who's been really good. They just beat the Clippers in this awesome 176-175 game. But come playoff time, when things slow down, are they going to be able to get stops when they need? Right? Yep. And so just sort of looking at the jockey.
I don't trust Memphis. Like,
at all. Me neither.
I don't.
at all. The Phoenix Suns are having Durant back tonight, so we'll see how it fits with them. They're in the 4 spot, but again, right, Eric, like looking at them, they are 3.5 games behind the Kings for the 3 spot, and they're only 4 games up on the 13.
For as much flack as Anthony Davis gets for missing games, if you just look at Durant the last couple of years, he's missing a ton of
games.
And I really don't know like how everything is gonna work there, because Durant,
just like you said, late in the game, what's gonna happen with is it Chris Paul and the other 2 stand in the corner? Or is it Durant's got the ball and then Devin Booker and Chris Paul stand in the corner? I don't know.
And also, like, Durant needs the ball at the top of the key. He likes to bring it up. You know what I mean? Like, it's not where it's just like, hey, get in the post. Hey, work the pick and roll. I don't know. Like, is Durant talented? Yes. Is Booker talented? Yes. But I think Booker's a little overrated in most casual NBA players' eyes. And I don't know. Like, I could see that exploding.
I agree. And that's, again, with 20 games left, they're as close to dropping into the play-in or out of the playoffs as they are as just getting to the 3 seed.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a lock for any of these teams, which is really scary. Heck, the Golden State Warriors, they've won 3 in a row without Curry. Wiggins is having some personal family issues, so we hope all is okay with them. They beat Houston, Minnesota, and Portland. And now they're all the way up to number 5, and they're only a game back of the 4. And reportedly, Curry should be back, I think, next week. It's just so weird because it's so fluid with all of these teams. Like a week ago, it looked like Golden State was on their way down, and now they've won 3 in a row, and all of a sudden they're back up to 5.
I mean, I really think they're up there because of the Clippers and Mavs struggling.
Yeah, you're right. It's more of the teams around them starting to struggle than it is to them really getting red hot. Now, we spoke about the Mavs and we spoke about the Clippers already. Let's get to the T-Wolves. They're in the number 8 spot. They just beat the Clippers, and now they kind of had a nice schedule where they beat the Clippers and they on Tuesday, and they don't play till Friday when they play the Lakers. And then the Lakers are going to be coming back from a little bit like a road trip. So T-Wolves get a big win, which snapped a 3-game losing streak. But they're only 4-8 in their last 12. But some of their role players have stepped up and helped. And that's sort of what they made the trade for. They made the trade to let it be Ant's team. And it feels like they're going to pick one of the big guys next year and maybe get rid of the other big guy. And you have like guys like Naz Reid and McDaniels who have stepped up in some of their last few games and really helped them. What do you think about the T-Wolves? Like, I mean, I don't know. I really, really am not sure if they are a team that is still all that motivated. But I will say I like them handing the keys over to Ant because I'm really high on him.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last year that's what they should have done is hand it over to him right away. It made 0 sense, the trade that they did in my eyes, sending Russell. I just really feel it was the GM's way of saying, hey, I'm going to get Mike Conley here because Mike Conley has worked with Rudy Gobert in the past. I just, with how this team is built, I just have a lot of issues.
So the Jazz now, they had a really bad loss at home to the Spurs. The Spurs had lost 16 in a row. Now, the Jazz play Friday and Sunday, both against Oklahoma City. Those are important games. And then they have a 6-game road trip ahead. Do you think they're going to be one of these teams that kind of continues to fall?
Yeah, they don't want it in the playoffs at all.
No,
they're gonna keep falling and going back. That's exactly what they want to happen. So they're fine with it, man. You know what I mean? It's one of those things they were overachieving to start the season.
Absolutely.
So they were absolutely fine with what's going on.
And then you have the Pelicans who are not playing good ball either. They've lost 4 in a row. They've lost 5 of 6. In that stretch, the only game they won by 3. And their next 7 games, at Portland, at Golden State, at Sacramento. Then they come home and they play Dallas, OKC, Portland, and the Lakers. So a lot of these teams in the West that are right in front of them or right behind them, and they're just not. They lost to Orlando last night. They're really not playing well, and so the games for them that you sort of would have circled as wins aren't wins right now. And that's sort of what's happening with them and with Utah. Or the New Orleans Pelicans, when Zion was healthy, this team was the 1 seed on December the 30th. And he's another guy that we'll continue to talk about, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more conversations about, is like, what do you do with a guy like him? What do you do?
He's just not reliable.
Like, how can you count on him and pay him big money and trust him?
You can't. You just can't. You got to move on from it, unfortunately.
It's sad because when he's playing, he's so talented. Even this year in glimpses when he hasn't played even consistently. Last year, he was still good. But Zion, it's a bummer as this Pelicans team is all the way down to the 10 spot. Now, Portland. See, like all of these teams.
Portland doesn't play enough defense.
No, Portland plays no defense, and they've lost 3 of their last 4. And they've got a 6-game road trip. They go at Atlanta, at Orlando, at Detroit. Those aren't great teams, but Portland's only 12-18 on the road. They're a bad road team. They then play at Boston, at Philly, and the Pelicans. So
that's a team with how bad they play defense. You just can't trust them absolutely at all.
And that's the only thing for me, Eric, as a Laker fan, that where I feel like, again, LeBron's hurt. And tonight, as the Lakers are playing, Anthony Davis isn't playing. He hasn't played on the back-to-backs. They're doing it. I think they're just doing that because it's a back-to-back more so than him being hurt, which is what they said. But
this is my thing with the Lakers. I don't feel so like with the Raptors. I feel right now with the Raptors when I watch them play, I feel there's a sense of urgency.
Oh, see, because I do with the Lakers. I do like because did you watch, like, if for example the game last night?
The third quarter, like I had my live stream last night. I had the game on the corner, and they gave up 47 points.
That was the problem, is that if in the first half they were awesome and Anthony Davis was like just dominating on defense, and it becomes a little bit too much when there's no, because what ended up happening in the second half, you start asking Anthony Davis every time to be like, hey, you're the defensive stopper, and then on offense, we're going to throw it to you every single time because we don't have LeBron and we don't really have D'Angelo. And that started to happen. And I mean, Ja just went crazy in the third quarter. Yeah. That's really what happened. Like, they couldn't stop Ja, but they played really hard. And even after that, they came all the way back. What happened is they were turning it over. So I kind of feel like there's that effort level from them. And from some of these new guys too, like they're playing hard and they're a better team. And I don't think they even need to go win 10 in a row. You just sort of have to be better than these teams around you that are also struggling. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens towards the bottom of the West right now, Eric, because man, I mean, like every day things flip and flop so much.
And I will say this, I think like everyone talks about LeBron and everything. I think one thing with LeBron that just truly just utterly effing amazes me when you look at his career is who taught him basketball. Because like if you just kind of look at the top 10 players of all time, Shaquille O'Neal, had Dale Brown, one of the best college basketball coaches ever. Okay. Like literally ever as his
coach.
College coach. Kobe Bryant obviously grew up around the NBA with his dad, pro ball in Italy. So he was around the game. Tim Duncan, came in. Pop was there as his coach as a rookie. And I'm spacing on who his coach was at Wake Forest. Larry Bird goes in to Boston and everything they had there when he was young. Magic Johnson, Judd Heathcote at Michigan State, one of the most underrated college basketball coaches. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, developmental years. John Wooden, Wilt Chamberlain, spacing on who Will Chamberlain had as his coach. But I had this written down. I can't find my sheet of paper.
But everyone has these awesome like mentors, or at least
in
really
their young developmental years, they have these mentors. LeBron James went right to high school to Brendan Malone. You know what I mean? It's like he really didn't have a coach until he had already taken teams to a championship game. And when he got Spoelstra by far, and it's not even close, has been his best coach. And it's, I don't know, it's just when you just kind of think back, like he is truly the smartest basketball mind probably ever. And it's all self-taught.
And he's so unselfish for all the crap that he gets from guys who, anyone who wants to compare him to Jordan, he's never really had any scandals, right? Like he's came in, he's always had his head on pretty straight. There are times where he's not the greatest teammate, right? Like there are times where he's not always the greatest leader, but then there are times where he is a really good leader, and you can see like how important it is to his teammates when LeBron gives him a high five after a great pass, or just acknowledges what they're doing, or after a game in a press conference when LeBron mentions Austin Reeves or Lonnie Walker or gives him a nickname. Like, so I think for a lot of the crap that he gets, there are moments where you could see him also being a great leader. And, you know, in the West, it's so wide open where we don't really trust the 2 seed. The 3 seed has never shown us anything in the playoffs, and they're having an awesome year, but they have to prove it. The 4 seed is a brand new team. The 5 seed started off this year with their teammates punching each other, and they've had a lot of guys in and out. The 6 seed, we've seen the Clippers the last few years. We don't really trust them. The 7 seed, Kyrie just joined them. We don't know what's going on. Minnesota made a trade, and they haven't really fit all year. The Jazz are likely going to drop out, and the Pelicans have struggled. There's just nobody in here other than the Nuggets that you can really, truly trust. And it's not as if the Nuggets are unbeatable, right? Like I think if any of these teams played their best versions of themselves, they could beat the Nuggets. You just don't know what to expect from any of these teams.
No, nothing at all. So it's completely wide open. The West is going to be a complete crapshoot with who gets there.
So, Eric, talk to us about what we've got going on over the next few days. You and I are going to pick back up this week with those Sanity to Pick'em preview contests. We'll do a stream for that probably on Friday evening. We'll do some college basketball Saturday morning with Better Than Vegas at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And then Sunday morning, noon Eastern time, we'll be talking some NBA. What else do you have coming up this week?
I have my podcast that comes out on Friday. There'll be some UFC talk, some basketball talk, some NASCAR. We hit Kyle Busch 10-1, and some early fantasy football talk. Me and my boy Nick had a insane discussion about where to draft Travis Kelce for next year's fantasy football draft, and how he's going to be probably the hardest player ever to decide where you have to draft him. So
stay tuned on everything going on in the world of sports with Eric. Thanks so much, buddy. We'll check in again next week with everything going on in the NBA, and I'll talk to you this weekend for some college basketball and some NBA.
Sounds good, my friend.
Folks, don't go anywhere. Still a lot more to discuss on this episode of That's What G Said. If you're watching or listening on social media, thanks so much for hanging out. Make sure to give Eric a follow and check out all of his great content.